Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Out Smile. I'm your host, Dr. Amber Q, and to be honest, I had a lot of things to talk about, but I didn't note them down, and now I'm thinking, I'm sure there were additional things that I wanted to mention. But in any case, the one thing that I did want to talk about is the fact that I went to a very interesting event the other day. I went to a book launch. So this is what I was referring to in a previous podcast. And essentially, the person that I had met when I was outdoors photographing a tree, I think about 2 years ago, it may have been less, it may have been a bit more, but the person I met was a lady who essentially works in sustainability and fashion. She's worked for all the glossy mags, including Vogue Australia, and she was the sustainability editor there. And she's absolutely lovely. Her name is Clare Press, and the name of her book is Where Next. I'm sure that pun was intended in terms of where, WEAR, and the subtitle is Fashioning the Future. And it was really interesting because I'd met this lady and we had a chat, and she very kindly mentioned me in the book, which is very exciting for me, and she invited me to her book launch. So last week I went to attend the book launch, which was in Covent Garden in London at a swanky place called The Conduit, which is, I think, a members club in London in Covent Garden. And it was very exciting because I've not been really to kind of an insider fashion event. I don't know, would you say it was fashion, or pertaining to the industry of fashion, let's say. And it was absolutely lovely. There was a fantastic introduction, and then a couple of people did a reading from the book. I think one was a designer. I think a couple of the people were they were all in fashion. And then the interview with the author. And it was very moving. She spoke about Palestine, which I have to admit, I nearly started crying. And it was just wonderful. And it brought to mind, I often speak about sort of watching what we consume and where the funds are going for that company that, consumes. And I thought it was really interesting because I guess I hadn't really, we think of fashion, we think of fast fashion, we think of landfill. But this book and the event was all about people who were, I guess, designers and had sustainable fashion businesses or brands. So it was so interesting chatting with a few people, looking at the way people had sort of uniquely created their outfits by upcycling. So lots of stylishly dressed people there. It was a really lovely event. And as I queued up to get my book signed, I had a little chat with Claire, and it was lovely. And she's such an inspirational, warm person. Her talk, which was in the form of an interview, but the things she was saying, they were very uplifting and inspirational. And essentially, it's all about sort of removing inequity in the fashion business. But of course, it comes down to the consumers and what we do as well, and how we are going to move forward into the future. And as we see the genocide in Gaza, which essentially is a land grab, and what's happening in Congo and other places in the world, Sudan and Somalia, I think, as well, and just Yemen. It's interesting, isn't it? All these power dynamics, but at the end of the day, people suffer, and it's normally down to some sort of measure of greed, whether it's from the government or indirectly, down to consumerism. And so, it was so interesting to attend that event. And I've got a book right here with my little note from Claire, which is lovely. And I just think it's fantastic because it's really opened my eyes to something else. And I am blessed to be helping or advising a fashion brand as well, which is very exciting on certain matters. And I just love doing that as well. So I feel that the world is full of such good people, and I've always wanted to connect like-minded people who are doing things for the greater good, for the betterment of society and the world. And I'd urge you to read Clare's book, and if you're interested in fashion, I think you will love it. And quite frankly, if you're not that into fashion, I still think you should read it, because it gives such a fascinating insight into the future of clothing, quite frankly. And let's face it, we all wear clothes. But more than that, I was listening to Dr. Myriam Francois, and she made a couple of very interesting points. And in fact, I'm going to play those to you now.
My name is Dr. Myriam Francois, and I'm here today with Health Workers for Palestine. I'm not a medical doctor, but I stand with health workers because whether here or in Gaza, they are the front line. This week saw a brutal attack on yet another hospital, Nasser Hospital, where our colleagues Dr. Khalid Aslar and Dr. Ahmed Morabi are among the abducted and missing. Over 659 health workers have been killed so far, and 110 are missing. We must demand accountability. Say it with me. Where is Dr. Aslan? Where is Dr. Mohrabi? In the midst of such darkness, I want to talk about hope. The late great Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish wrote, "Without hope, we are lost." 134 days into the horrors unfolding, it can feel hard to maintain that hope. Overwhelmed by the power and adaptability of oppressive systems, it can sometimes feel hard to hold on. But hold on, we must. Angela Davis reminds us that no movement is possible without hope. Hope is resistance, and shared hope forms the very foundations of solidarity, power, and the potential for change. This is no time to slow down, people. At this moment, you are the hope and prayers of families stuck in tents with no food, water, or medicine. You are the hope of detained medics and injured journalists. You are the hope many are holding on to. So what can we do? Any successful movement must recognize the pillars of power in its society. And here in the temples of capitalism, money is God. Each and every one of you has spending power, which makes the wheels of this economy turn, currently in service to a small elite who are ignoring the voice of the people. So how do we make them listen? How we spend is how they listen. Say it with me. How we spend is how they listen. Again, how we spend is how they listen. Our consumption is a reflection of who we are. From today, I call on each and every one of you to begin a global boycott movement. Boycotting is consumer activism. It means each and every one of us is going to swerve every major corporation that has not yet divested from complicity with ethnic cleansing, apartheid, and mass murder. Because the truth is, divesting from plausible genocide is really the bare minimum. From Palestine to Congo, we say no divestment, no spend. And again, no divestment, no spend. When we shop from now on, we shop local, we shop independent, and we shop ethical. How do we shop? Local, independent, ethical. It's time to let the corporates know that we mean business. No divestment, no spend. No divestment, no spend. Consumer activism like this has worked before, and it can work again. It has influenced corporate advocacy on climate change, racial justice, and marriage equity. And from now on, Palestinian freedom is going to be core to our consumer ethics. Until when Nike joins with negotiate. Until then, remember that while we may think we are freeing Palestine, it is always Palestine freeing us. When we free Palestine, when we free Palestine, we free ourselves. Our struggles are one, power to the people. Boycott, boycott, boycott. Free, free Palestine.
I think that's super powerful, don't you? Apologies for the poor sound quality because I was literally playing it via my phone, and that was from her Instagram account, which I will link to the bottom of, well, to my show notes. And so this is the thing, you know, whatever we're purchasing, whether it is clothing, whether it is anything else, we should be spending with consideration. And really, you know, rather than giving money to some corporate for their brand, we should be helping others who are less fortunate with charitable donations. And I feel that this is so close to my heart, and it was just so wonderful to sort of marry up these different, I suppose, considerations, you know, thinking about fashion. And obviously I'm not involved in fashion, so I wasn't really thinking about the future of fashion, quite frankly. And Claire really brought that to mind with her latest book. And that's absolutely thrilling. But what's even more thrilling, as Dr. Myriam Francois said, was that we are setting ourselves free if we shop locally and independently, and if we shop with consideration. Until the next episode, let's all create connection and not just change lives, but save lives.